Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to go my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we'll go to our first match of the night. It is MJF versus Kyle Fletcher. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between MJF and Fletcher, with MJF keeping the pace of the match. MJF then hits a powerbomb on Fletcher for a near fall. Fletcher then gets up, hits a moonsault to the outside, taking out MJF. Fletcher then hits a elbow drop off the top rope. MJF then gets up, hits a hammerlock DDT on Fletcher for a near fall. MJF then hits a Canadian Destroyer, and then MJF applies a Salt of the Earth on Fletcher. Fletcher counters, hold is broken. Fletcher then hits a Tombstone Piledriver on MJF for a near fall. Don Callis then distracts the referee. He throws a screwdriver in the ring. Fletcher then grabs the screwdriver. He throws it out of the ring. MJF then hits a kangaroo kick on Fletcher. And then MJF ultimately hits a brainbuster on Fletcher, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match is MJF. After the match, Ospreay then goes out to the ring. MJF then attacks the referee. MJF then hits Fletcher with the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Ospreay comes out to the ring to save Kyle Fletcher. A couple of things I want to say about this, man. Number one, this was probably one of the best matches on the card, top to bottom, last night. Dynamite last night wasn't the greatest, and I'll get into that later on in the podcast, but this was probably one of the best, if not the best match of the night. And it tells a great story. Obviously, there's some unfinished business there between Ospreay and MJF. They have a high marquee matchup at All In for the international title, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. I think All In's in about 2 weeks from now, give or take. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But this match between MJF and Fletcher was a really good, decent matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Mariah May versus Viva Van. Thought it was a decent match, back-and-forth matchup between May and Van, with May keeping the pace of the match. May hits a Mayday on Van. May then hits a Storm Zero as well on Viva Van, pins her for the 3, and your winner of the match is Mariah May. After the match, Toni Storm is here. She ends up attacking Mariah May, pretty much trying to send a message to Mariah May leading up to their match at All In. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Brian Keith versus Shibata. I thought it was a good match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Keith and Shibata, with Shibata keeping the pace of the match. But Shibata applies a submission hold on Brian Keith. Keith taps out, and your winner of the match is Shibata. After the match, Jericho and Big Bill attack Shibata, and then all of a sudden, Hook's music hits. Hook comes down to the ring and attacks Jericho and Big Bill. Moving on from that, we have a Swerve Strickland sit-down with Jim Ross. Swerve talks about All In and how important it is to be at All In and defend the AEW World title. And Swerve also talks about Bryan Danielson. He also talks about the fact that Danielson is pretty much at a crossroads in his career. You know, everybody realizes that Danielson's career is coming to an end. And Swerve realizes that. You know, and Jim Ross had mentioned a couple things to Swerve about, you know, the fact that, you know, Danielson's going into this match, you know, with a lot to lose. You know, if he loses this match, his career is over. You know, and that could make a dangerous person out of Bryan Danielson. But Swerve seems like he's not worried. Swerve seems like he, number one, is on top of his game right now. And Swerve is carrying this company on his back with that AEW World title. So, I mean, this is going to be, again, one of those matches at All In that's definitely going to be a marquee matchup. Everybody wants to see this matchup and see what the outcome is going to be. Is Bryan Danielson going to walk out of All In at Wembley the new AEW World Champion, or is Swerve going to beat Bryan Danielson, and Danielson's in-ring career is over, and he's going to retire? It's one of the biggest questions of the night, if you will, going into All In. Absolutely. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a 6-man tag team matchup. It is Orange Cassidy teaming up with FTR versus Roosh Beast Mortis and Roderick Strong. It was a good match, man. It was a decent match, back-and-forth matchup between both teams, with Orange Cassidy and FTR keeping the pace of the match. The Kingdom were ringside during this match. They ended up attacking Dax Harwood, but FTR ultimately hit the Shatter Machine, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Orange Cassidy and FTR. After the match, the Acclaim's music hits. They come down the ramp. They were trying, well, Max was trying to, you know, get on the microphone, but his microphone wasn't working. FTR kind of, you know, I don't know if they cut his mic off or maybe something happened in the back, but Max Caster's mic was not working. And all of a sudden, an all-out brawl happened between the Acclaimed and FTR. Looks like there's some unfinished business here between the Acclaimed and FTR that stems from last week's collision. So looks like we are going to have a matchup here between the Acclaimed and FTR relatively soon, so I'm definitely anticipating that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It was a glorified squash match. This is Camille versus pretty much two jobbers. It's a handicap matchup. Camille was keeping the pace throughout the entire match, with Camille applying a torture rack, and then Camille ultimately hits the finish, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Camille. After the match, Tony Schiavone interrupts Mercedes Moné, who was on the microphone, and says that Tony Khan has uplifted Britt Baker's suspension. After that, Baker is shown on the Titantron, and Baker mocks Mercedes Moné leading up to their match at All In. Moving on from that, we go into the main event of last night's Dynamite. It is Jeff Jarrett versus Bryan Danielson in a no disqualification match. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was here during this match. He was on commentary throughout this match. It was a decent match, man. It was a good match, back and forth matchup between Jarrett and Danielson, with Jarrett keeping the pace of the match. Jarrett then hits a figure 4, but Danielson breaks the hold. Jarrett and Danielson both exchange in the middle of the ring, but Danielson ultimately gets the finish, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Bryan Danielson. Hats off to Bryan Danielson for getting the win in this matchup. A couple things I want to talk about when it pertains to AEW, man, especially last night. And I'm not going to go on a huge rant here. I'm not going to do that. It's way too early for that. But what I will say is this. You know, if you're comparing apples to oranges, man, obviously WWE is leagues ahead right now. Leagues ahead of what AEW is doing. As far as production value, as far as in-ring talent, storylines, championship matches, you know, PLEs. I mean, WWE is firing on all cylinders. AEW right now is, in my honest opinion, in serious trouble. I genuinely believe that for a couple of reasons. I know a lot of people were like, you know, people were getting upset with, oh, well, AEW fans, you know, with the Lucha Bros possibly leaving AEW, everybody's like, oh, AEW is over. I don't think AEW is over. But I think losing a tandem tag team like, you know, the Lucha Bros with Penta and Phoenix is a big deal. I think, number one, I think Penta and Phoenix are going to do great over in the main roster in WWE, hands down. And I'm very excited for what they can do in WWE, and I can't wait for for them to debut with WWE. I think it's a great addition to the main roster over in WWE. But it is a loss for AEW. I mean, you're talking about two gentlemen being, you know, Penta and Phoenix, that are originals of AEW. I mean, they were there, I believe, for that press conference when, you know, pretty much All Elite Wrestling was kind of announced. And, you know, especially Double or Nothing and stuff like that. I mean, you know, Penta and Phoenix were a part of this. And to see them kind of walk away, it's crazy. But I can tell you this right now, that, you know, that list of AEW talent going over to WWE, it's a long list, man. And I mentioned this last week. You know, Ricky Starks, I think Ricky is on the fast track to go over, whether it's NXT or the main roster over at WWE, yeah. I mean, he's turning down creative ideas from Tony Khan and his creative team. And it's just like Ricky Starks, it's just checked out, man. And I think, unfortunately, with AEW, it is going to take one of those big household names, you know, like an MJF or a John Moxley or something like that, to leave AEW, and that will really cripple this company. And, you know, and my thing is, and I watched the main roster stuff, and I'm actually enjoying it. But you look at what they did with Cody, and, you know, if I was Tony Khan, that's got to be nerve-wrenching to see the fact that you let this guy go, and he goes over to WWE. And, I mean, Cody probably wanted to go back to WWE. It probably had some unfinished business. But to see what they're doing with Cody over in WWE is just incredible. I mean, he's the current WWE champion. The video packages, I mean, SummerSlam was awesome. I mean, we get Cody beating Solo Sikoa and the return of Roman Reigns. You know, and just the lead up to that match was great. You know, and, you know, Cody finishing his story. AEW wasn't doing anything close to that for Cody. It just was not happening. I will give credit where credit's due to Tony Khan in the fact that he gave Cody an opportunity to get himself a household name and more popularity for him to go over to WWE. He did the same thing for CM Punk. I don't care how you want to cut the bread, but at the end of the day, if it wasn't for Tony Khan, I don't think CM Punk, you know, would even be in WWE at this point. So, you know, Khan gave him an opportunity to come back into wrestling and get his name out there again. And then, you know, when the stuff happened between AEW and CM Punk, which ultimately led to him to get terminated, and now he's with WWE. But he's doing phenomenal things over in WWE as well. You know, and what I'm trying to get at is that if AEW keeps going the route that they're going, I genuinely believe that there's a shelf life for AEW. And It might be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, including myself, but things with AEW right now are not looking good. Whether you look at it from the rating standpoint to the TV talks, TV rights deal, which I'll get into in a sec, it doesn't really look that good for AEW right now. And the TV rights deal, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I know they had a media call, if you will, or a conference call with executives over in Time Warner. They didn't really mention AEW from what I understand. I wasn't a part of this call, but I got information about the call. And the information that I got was basically the fact that the executives over in Time Warner, and rightfully so, are leaning into more focusing on their streaming deals and putting more content out on their streaming deals. Now, I don't know if this includes AEW. I have no idea. I know Time Warner and Warner Media took a humongous loss with the loss of the NBA. I know TNT and TBS took a huge loss because of that. And I don't know what the damn holdup is with the TV rights talks between AEW and the executives over in Time Warner, and what's the holdup on the streaming deal. I mentioned the streaming deal now. I mean, Christ, man, it's been a while. And I think at this point, it's something that AEW needs to do. Basic cable television is just not what it used to be, definitely not 10, 15 years ago. A lot of it now is streaming. I mean, if you look at what Monday Night Raw is doing next year in January. They're going to Netflix. And AEW is playing second fiddle. Tony Khan likes to point the finger at everybody else about, everybody saying that they're sabotaging AEW and they're praying for AEW's failures. But at the end of the day, this guy, I feel like he's so delusional that he doesn't really know or see really what the hell's going on around him. I genuinely don't. I really don't. I mean, you can sit here and say, oh, this person wants this to fail. This person wants this to fail. Your company's failing because of how you book these shows, man. You have a talented roster, a great roster, but a roster that's pissed off because they're not getting TV time and refusing creative decisions because your creative is trash. That's just the way it is. I mean, Ricky Starks, God, man, Ricky Starks is, he's still a young guy. He still has a lot of time left in pro wrestling to really build he hasn't even hit his prime yet. And he has a lot of time to build the future accolades for himself and his career. But AEW is just not doing it. It's not. And like I said, man, there's going to be a lot of names that are currently on the AEW roster that are going to be leaving. Ricky Starks, Wardlow. There's some current talent that was from WWE that went to AEW that might go back. Buddy Matthews, Malachi Black, Keith Lee. His contract's expiring here relatively soon. If the opportunity is there for them to go back to the WWE, you don't think they're not going to take it? Yeah, they're gone. Because the fact of the matter is that some of those people probably have unfinished business in WWE. Now, there's guys like Christian and Adam Copeland that probably will finish up their wrestling career with AEW and then ride off in the sunset. Because there's literally nothing for them to do in WWE. Nothing. They accomplished everything. I think that's the same thing with Bryan Danielson. I think Danielson, chose to go over to AEW because there was nothing else left for him to do over in WWE. He's done everything over in WWE. He accomplished a lot. Endless amount of, accolades over there. But there's going to be a lot more talent from AEW that goes over to WWE. Absolutely. And rightfully so, man. I mean, like I said, I don't want to see AEW fail. And I mentioned this multiple times in the past. Competition breeds success. But is it really competition at this point between WWE and AEW? And I would have to say absolutely no. The WWE are leagues ahead of what AEW is doing. Leagues ahead. The PLEs, the production value, the talent, the storylines is way better than AEW. Hands down. I mean, if you look at just the whole package of WWE right now, I mean, you look at NXT. And I covered a show for NXT, and I wasn't a humongous fan of the show. I think it was one of the events that Jordynne Grace came over and had a match with Roxanne Perez. Jordynne Grace is, she's great. She's very talented. She's a current TNA Knockouts champion, from what I understand, and she's a powerhouse. Absolutely. And obviously there's a working relationship there between NXT and TNA. And now with TNA or NXT going over to the CW in October, they're going back to doing live arenas again. They're going to do Allstate Arena in Chicago, and then they're going to St. Louis, Missouri for another live show. And like I mentioned earlier, they had two special guests. They got CM Punk for the Allstate Arena show, and they got Randy Orton as a special guest for the show in Missouri. And it looks like they're taking NXT back on the road, and that's great. It's awesome. They're doing the right stuff to keep them, to keep them afloat. And I'm not saying that, WWE's in shambles. They're doing all the right shit. AEW is not. You know, it was even advertised, I believe, that the Young Bucks were going to comment on the situation between MJF and Britt Baker. When I saw that, I literally shook my head. I was like, why? Why, man? I mean, it's getting to a point where AEW is not really becoming a wrestling show anymore. It's becoming just a drama infestation, just garbage, to be honest. And I hate saying that. I mean, I am a huge fan of AEW. I'm also a huge fan of WWE. But to see what AEW has been over the past 2 years compared to what it was for the first 3 years has been just awful, man. Awful. I can honestly say within the last couple of years, the best thing that's come out of AEW was Sting's farewell tour. To be, if I'm being brutally honest. Yeah, it's great to see Okada. It's great to see Will Ospreay. But how long is it going to be until that well has run dry with Ospreay and Okada? Even Mercedes Moné at this point. You know what I mean? Like, we talked about this like 2 weeks ago with Shane McMahon. You know, do I think Shane coming into AEW would be a bad thing? Hell no. Hell no. And I think as a fan for the company, you would have to probably say the same thing. What is it going to do? It ain't going to hurt anything. Bringing Shane in is going to get more eyeballs on the product. And the fact that Tony Khan is willing to work with a McMahon, it's a big deal. The other thing too is the free agents. You know, I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Ricochet's going to AEW." Well, where the hell is he? When's his contract up? And you look at Bobby Lashley. Is he coming over to AEW? Who knows? You know, AEW, whatever the hell it is, and what it's going to take, AEW needs a shot in the arm, man. Bad. Very, very badly. Because last night's show, and I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, well, they had travel issues and yada, 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 this, that, and the other, and the third. I don't give a damn about that, to be honest with you, man. I mean, prime example, obviously, I don't think the show was taped last night. So if you look at the narrative, you see Adam Page there in a backstage segment with Renee Paquette. Why didn't he have a damn match? Book him in a match. You do a backstage interview with Renee, book him in a damn match. But no, we're getting 6-man tag matches just thrown together. We're getting Danielson versus Jarrett, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, man. I'm a huge fan of Danielson, but Jarrett, I mean, God. You know, like, I can't tell you enough how Jarrett needs to stay in the back. I'm sorry. And my standpoints on Jarrett are going to be the same even when the whole Owen Hart thing happened. When the tournament and all that stuff and the promo that he cut and everything else. My feelings on Jarrett are still the same. Jarrett needs to have a backstage role. He does not need to be shown on AEW television. His career is done, folks. It's done. I'm sorry. If you're a Jarrett fan, I hate to break it to you. His career's done. The minute that man wins the AEW World title, this company shuts down in 24 hours. Seriously. You're not like... And people could say, oh, well, he's there to enhance talent. How? You're not enhancing Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson is leagues above Jeff Jarrett throughout his entire career. You're not enhancing younger talent. You're not. Jarrett still wants the spotlight. That's exactly what it is. And let me give you all a little news flash about Jarrett. Jarrett didn't have an elaborate career. With all due respect, the best part of Jarrett's career, honestly, when he was in TNA, working with Dixie Carter. That's it. That is the highlight of Jarrett's career. He won the World Heavyweight Championship in WCW at a time where the company was folding and failing. That was it. Failing. And the numbers were in the toilet for WCW at the time. They had no other option but to give the belt to Jarrett. Because at that time, towards the end of it, it was 3 guys, maybe 4, that were the top draws right there for WCW at that time, towards the end of the end of the tenure for WCW. And it was Jarrett, DDP, Booker T, and Scott Steiner. Those were your top 4 draws for WCW in late 99, early 2000. His WWE career in the beginning was a joke. Yeah, he was Intercontinental Champion. That's great. Awesome. Tag Team Champion. All right. How many World Championships has Jarrett got? How many title reigns does he have as a World Champion? Not many. His best in-ring career stuff that he's ever done in his career has been what he's done with TNA. Hands down. And I will argue that to the damn moon. But despite that, it just, AEW last night was it was just awful show, man. I can't, like, and it's sad, man. I understand there was travel issues, and I get that, and I understand that. But my God, man, you want to talk about you just throwing ideas against the wall and hoping something sticks? That was last night, and it bombed. You're 2 weeks out of All In, your biggest show in company history, biggest show of the year, and we have this shit last night. I just like what are we doing here? You know what I mean? What are we doing? AEW was awful last night. It was a awful show, and I don't know what AEW is going to do in the future. But, we don't even know. Like I said, man, with the TV talks, like, that's kind of stifled at this point. We don't know what the hell is going on with that. The storylines in AEW are just not there. They're not present. You got your biggest show of the year in about, 2 weeks, 18 days, give or take? And we had a Dynamite like we did last night. You need to be building storylines and building up hype around these matches, man. And we're not getting that. We're not getting that. I'm sorry. This is not there. Yeah, we're getting Swerve and Danielson. Yeah, and rightfully so. It is Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland. The AEW World Champion versus Bryan Danielson. Yeah, there should be a lot of storyline with this match. Alone. I mean, Christ, Danielson's putting his career on the line against Swerve in this matchup at All In. It's a big, big deal. You got Ospreay and MJF. There's not really that much storyline there. Just unfinished business. Toni Storm and Mariah May. There's a little bit of a story there. A little bit of history between Mariah May and Toni Storm, absolutely. But other than that, there's really no build. Baker and Monet, okay. There's no video packages being played by that. It's a somewhat of a storyline if you want to call it that. But that's about it, man. I mean, that's 4 matches? That's all I'm saying. Tony Khan, like I said, with Tony, he wants to point the finger at everybody else, saying that everybody wants to see the downfall of AEW. But you need to start pointing the finger at yourself and taking responsibility for your actions, man. You're not doing anything to help this show out right now. You're not. I'm sorry, but you're not. And, you want to book the shows for the wrestling sickos, but even that is not even getting you guys, above a 600,000 rating. You get 680 maybe, once in a blue moon. You guys can't even reach a million, a million in the ratings. I mean, it's not there. And I know some people say, well, the ratings are not a big deal. No, it is a big deal. It is a big deal in the fact that they're also in talks with Time Warner for a TV contract. You don't think Time Warner and Warner Media is not looking at that shit? No, they're looking at that. Absolutely. If I was somebody that was working for Time Warner and Warner Media and seeing the ratings for this show, and you want money from me to give you another 5 years to produce your show, damn right I'm going to be looking at these ratings and telling Tony Khan something needs to change. Something needs to change. And I get it. There's no off-season for pro wrestling. It's 52 weeks out of the year. But you have some of the best talent in the world. Build storylines around this shit, man. It's not a hard concept to understand. It's not. I mean, I mentioned this about, a week or two ago? That Tony Khan books this shit like it's All Japan Pro Wrestling. There's no storyline. It was tournament-based. Best versus the best, and that's it. And yeah, that might have worked then. It might have worked then. And I mentioned it multiple times in the past. All Japan Pro Wrestling back in the late 80s, early 90s, or even early 80s was awesome. It was great wrestling. But that was then, and this is now. And that doesn't work over in the States, man. People want storylines that they can sink their teeth into and get invested in. They want to know the how, the when, and the where. That's what they want to know. How do we get here? When's it going to happen? And where's it going to happen? That's what fans want to see. And that's why WWE is firing on all cylinders right now, because they give you the how, the when, and the where. And they intensify their storylines. There's always something new, always something sizzling in the background to get you invested. To watch, I can't wait for next week. Like, for example, SmackDown this week. I can't wait for SmackDown because we're going to see Roman Reigns, and we're going to see what Roman Reigns has to say after being gone since WrestleMania last year. What's he got to say? What's he going to say about the bloodline? Is he going to reunite the old school bloodline? You know what I mean? There's so many questions that we want answers to when it pertains to Roman Reigns. That's the shit I'm talking about. That's what AEW needs, and we're not getting it. We're not. You know, the whole mission statement from AEW and especially the Young Bucks were, oh, we're going to change the world. Yeah, maybe the first 2 years. Maybe the first 3 years, maybe. These last 2 years have been shit. Has not been the same. The tag team division is awful at this point. You got one of the best tag teams in the world getting ready to leave the company to go over to your competitor with WWE. And honestly, I don't blame them for leaving. I don't. I don't. I don't. I think Penta and Phoenix would do very well over in WWE. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't blame them. I mean, they're probably, their career, at least Penta's career, is probably at some point coming to an end. And, you know, you want to get a bang for your buck. God bless them for it. God bless them for it. But at this point right now, AEW is just, I can't tell you guys how important it is that, you know, AEW needs a shot in the arm. They need something to bring a little bit of spotlight to the company. And right now, they just do not have it. At this point, if Shane's going to be a part of AEW, bring Shane in, put him on TV. You need something, some kind of excitement. Because right now, AEW just doesn't have it. They don't have it. And as far as everybody's saying, especially Tony Khan saying everybody's looking for the downfall of AEW, then fix it. Fix the damn company, man. Get people invested. Obviously, your experiment and what you want to do with AEW right now is not working. That experiment is coming to an end. You need to counter that and adapt to it and do something different. Because the way you're booking AEW is just not good. It shows from the fan standpoint. It shows from the rating standpoint. The shit that you're doing is not working, bud. And you need to start taking responsibility for what you're doing. Stop blaming everybody else. Because at this point, the fans is what's keeping AEW alive at this point. To be honest, the fan base that AEW has is keeping AEW alive at this point. And I genuinely believe that. You know what I mean? And I told you guys that AEW's Dynamite episodes as of late have seemed like old Nitro episodes from like late 1999, early 2000. That's what it seems like to me. And hopefully they can change that, and hopefully they can improve that. But AEW needs to hit the reset button. Because last night's Dynamite was an absolute awful show last night. It was awful. I'm sorry, but it was awful. And they need to hit the reset button immediately. So the show can last and things can get better with AEW. Because if not, this is going to be a slow burn for AEW. And it's going to be bad. Really, really bad. And I think fans are waiting for a change or something to happen with AEW that gets fans excited for AEW's product moving forward. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful and remember, stay classy.